Okay, well, yes, welcome everyone. And I can truly say it's a nice warm welcome from here in Wellington, which hasn't been the case. We've just been talking about the changeable weather that has been travelling throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand over the past few weeks. So very lovely to have a wonderful sunny warm day here. So my name's Sarah Talboys. I'm part of the ANZEA Board, and I thought what I'll do is just start with a karakia, and then I'll hand over to Ralph and Sara-Jane to introduce themselves and their topic. Then what we'll do is we'll just take questions at the end. So if you do have something burning, please feel free to post it in the chat and I'll help facilitate that at the end of the korero. And then I'll just close off with a karakia. So I chose whakataka taho just because of the weather that we've been having recently. So, whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga. Kia mā kena kena ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E he ake ana te atakura. He hio, he huha, he huka, he hohu. Tihei mauri ora. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Ralph and Sara-Jane from Elika Consulting. And they're going to talk with us about moving from data to dreams, which sounds completely wonderful, and data sovereignty and equity as economic levers. So I'm certainly fascinated to hear what that covers. So yeah, welcome Ralph and Sara-Jane.
Malolo, thank you, Sarah, for the opportunity. Ia o te whātolo whātua pia maulunga nei aso, ma ia monga te tele si ia pa ia monga iti mo le whio mai ma tala mai au. Whawhatai leo whare atua, ma whainga tātou ma futele nei I tū la. Malo lava le toi fu man wim langu ma. Talofa everyone. Hello. Sorry, I know it's lunchtime, So, you know, that's commitment. That's commitment. Timing your run to be here to listen to us at lunchtime. So there's a great start. So I don't want to hold you too long. So my name is Leaupepe Ta'ala Lengoi Ralph Elika, one of the directors here at Elika Consulting Group, or ECG. A bit about myself, New Zealand-born Samoan, and I hail from the promised land of West Auckland out here in Tamaki, out these ways, and schooled all the way through here. Have a real, quite random and diverse career. Started off as a lawyer, so I did law for a few years, and then got into sports management, and then jumped into foreign affairs and trade, and there I did a lot of work, primarily in the Melanesian countries and Papua New Guinea, Solomons, Vanuatu in particular, but then all the other places as well. And then did some professional consulting for the University of Auckland, a few other tertiary institutions. And then 7 years ago, started ECG with my wife, with Sarah. She'll introduce herself. So we've been running for 7 years. And I guess, and for the presentation, I'll give you some of the core work we kind of do around the strategy, engagement, and evaluation. But that's a bit about myself. And over to you, Sarah.
Talofa lava, greetings. Welcome to this Kai Korero today. We're really excited to be able to share with you. My name is Whiangai Mali'i Sara-Jane Elika, and I'm one of the directors here at ECG. And we've been running for 7 years. My background's in law and the creative arts, mainly media, management and music. And so I use kind of that skill set into what we do through ECG, which we'll share about today. So we'll just share our screen. Okay, so just a thumbs up that hopefully you can all see that.
Yes, I can.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Great. Cool. So just over the next half an hour or so, we're just looking at our topic today, which is From Data to Dreams, Data Sovereignty and Equity as Economic Levers. We'll be talking about how Pacific communities are reclaiming data as a tool for equity, innovation, and self-determination. And we'll talk this through a MERL lens to talk about how Pacific-led data and governance can reshape how we do monitoring and evaluation. So a little bit about us. We're based in Remuera, Auckland. We are a boutique consultancy and we focus on strategy, engagement, and evaluation. And those are our core business areas. The main thing we love to do is provide culturally relevant, industry-specific, evidence-based insights. I think that that's just a collection of our background as professionals. And we work mainly in Aotearoa and across the Asia Pacific region. And we're a purpose-driven organization, so our values are really key to our practice in terms of how we live and breathe. So excellence, respect, innovation, and resilience are our 4 areas that we lean on to provide our professional services and really kind of help us to be able to deliver our services the best we can for our clients.
Yeah, and with the work that we do over the last few years, it's a combination of all our experiences. We have our own approach to the Pacific economy. It's just an intimate understanding of Pacific peoples and the influences which drive their socio-economic aspirations and well-being. A key reason why we've kind of redefined how we approach the economy is what we've found, obviously, over the time we've been doing a lot of this work and working for various stakeholders, from public sector, private. There's always been a strong, I guess, deficit mentality with a lot of the data. And so a lot of the stuff we've done is we've kind of taken a strength-based, but it's allowed us to do the work that we do, and it kind of permeates through all the various projects that we're involved with. What's status?
Yeah, so today we'll just be looking at tools or insights for integrating Pacific data and sovereignty into evaluation frameworks. And this is really important because, you know, data is so important for identity for us as Pacific peoples. And, you know, the Pacific economy in New Zealand and of course across the Pacific region is growing, it's thriving, it's changing. And so behind the numbers, it's about people and purpose and the systems that recognize culture and community. And so just understanding what Pacific data looks like through equity, innovation, and self-determination is something that we love to talk about with other leaders and other evaluators in the space. And coming together to have this form of talanoa is why this matters.
And obviously with the MERL lens, as we alluded to, or as we discussed at the start, a lot of our work revolves around that strategy, engagement, and evaluation, which for a lot of you already kind of know that that's kind of like the life cycle anyway of a lot of the programs, initiatives, and policies that you run, and that a lot of us get into. So again, from having I guess a key framing question for us getting into this, and hopefully it'll trigger some thoughts around for all of you, is just around, you know, how do we refine evaluation to reflect Pacific worldviews? And we kind of said refine as opposed to redefine. It's the definition, the various, I guess, the metrics that we use when we evaluate. It's just adding that that worldview, just to deepen, I guess, the database and the knowledge base to what we're actually extracting and how we're going to use that. So looking at that from a MERL lens, it's looking at the monitoring, honestly, meaning making evidence grounded in stories and not just in statistics. And then there's the evaluation component. A lot of the stuff we're doing at the moment, when we're applying that Pacific worldview or an Indigenous worldview, it allows us to, the one key thing that we've found, I guess, is the approach to engagement. And that approach to engagement has allowed us to really get a lot of accuracy with the data that we extract from the various stakeholders and people we engage with. An example right now, we're doing a project for MB, Can't comment too much on it because it's due in like December, right? We're supposed to do that in December for them. But MB is essentially they've wanted us to look at the capability and capacity of Pacific businesses within the New Zealand context. And in particular, it's looking at how does that align for that going for growth strategy that the government has been putting forward. So obviously a key thing is definitions. Everyone on here knows before you start, you've got to get into those definitions. And part of those definitions, you've got like the export, for example. And when we first started the discussion with MB and Auckland Council, various stakeholders, there was a clear defined path. You know, there's a formal export path that includes a supply chain, all that jazz. And we've kind of incorporated key aspects around it, especially around that intervention logic, all that stuff. But what happened is, as we started the engagement, as we started to engage with the various Pacific businesses, with the Pacific stakeholders, it came very clear to us that a lot of, and some of these businesses were thriving, they're successful. Some of these business owners have bought homes, setting up offices. But the most amazing thing we've found so far from the trends and the themes that are emerging is a lot of them have gone through an informal off-road track to export. And the challenge that we're finding, which we're going to communicate later on in our reports, we've still got a bit to go through at this stage, is that we could already see that the definition of export is very narrow from a Pacific perspective. They use other means. So it's not just the usual freight system, logistics, getting containers. It's utilizing people, it's familial networks, it's wide. And it's thought through and it's strategic. It's very strategic. So it's looking at for example, one of them is sending products and they're looking at the off-peak hours and periods for flights and things like that. So and they've got a whole calendar, time to run. So their supply chain looks ad hoc from if you're an external person looking at it, but it's very deliberate. It's a very deliberate way of utilizing manpower, utilizing resources, and improving margins, profit margins. So again, that's a key example we've found already by utilizing that Pacific worldview, the engagement, creating a safe space which allows people to share. A lot of the work that, for example, this example I'm sharing, the crazy thing is this is not illegal, it's not black market, it's not anything, it's just a very common sense approach that is used, but is used in a collective form which allows for a return on investment and allows on it. So it's when we do it like this, what we found is, and the reason why we connect this back to the data is it's research communities is defining what success looks like for them. And so before we could even define what success looks like, it's talking to those communities that we're researching to understand how they define export, how they define return, and how they define scalability. So all those key things come back to empowering those research communities as to how they define, how they understand the operations, and then having to amalgamate that within, I guess, the Western frameworks that we've already got in existence to ensure that there is that compliance. We're still achieving those objectives, but we're also providing depth. And so it's data that's used to sustain the systems, initiatives, and obviously a lot of the stuff we're also going to recommend eventually some cultural insights that will, I guess, give some recognition to some of the work that's been in there. Yep.
Cool. So we're just going to share 5 insights with you today. Firstly, safeguarding Pacific data and stories, cultural capital as economic power. So the more the community or the group that is being researched feels empowered to own that data, that is when equity takes shape. And it's a form of self-determination for Indigenous communities as well. When Pacific peoples own and have their own data, they shift the power because they're feeling included as part of the research. And being able to tell those stories and assert critical truths brings identity to the data. And when held by Pacific hands and told in Pacific voices, it becomes cultural capital. And that is the powerful economic asset that drives policy, funding, and transformation. And so this data sovereignty, it really matters because, you know, with the digital future and with AI and the evolution of that, data sovereignty for Pacific peoples should become a non-negotiable, because we have the right to collect our own stories, our own data, and interpret data in a way that can rest with our own communities to be used to create a stronger community as well. So that's the first insight that I wanted to share, that, you know, data needs to reflect lived realities that incorporate cultural norms, languages, literacy, faith, spiritual frameworks. They need to be built into data tools and used as evidence-based systems. And the way that happens in Pacific communities a lot is through storytelling. And the ownership of that storytelling does equal the influence in how our community uses that for its strength. But I think overall, when Pacific peoples control their understanding of the narrative, that can be used to influence decision-making, budgets, and systems change as well. Just move to the second insight. So this one here is strengthening Pacific health, data development, and whānau-led design. So in the health space at the moment, you know, there are some amazing academics and doctors that are bringing forth a lot of grounded work for Pacific communities in the health space that quite often has championed other industries as well, with the way that whānau-led design is working. I just want to acknowledge Dame Dr. Tewila Percival, who has done a lot of work in this area. And recently she shared a quote from eminent epidemiologist Sir Jeffrey Rose, who said, the primary determinants of disease are mainly economic and social, and therefore its remedies must also be economic and social. And just by her sharing their understanding in terms of whānau-led design in the health space, there is, you know, it moves across other industries as well. So the key principles that are coming out of strengthening Pacific health data is through culturally grounded care, which means incorporating Pacific values, faith, and worldviews, which are essential elements of effective healthcare. Looking at evidence-based practices, which include intergenerational living, the church, different languages to communicate, because in the Pacific peoples have different languages from their own peoples, their own country groups. And also looking and identifying what are the vital determinants of child health and well-being. I just wanted to also acknowledge Dr. Maileatunga Jacinda Whiro, who has done research around the Wā o Te Maiti, which is a relational resilience framework. And this really brings out the importance of stable, caring adult relationships and ecological influences on resilience, and the movement of what's happening around health and well-being for Pacific in the health space is really supporting what it means to talk about whānau-led design and creating policies for people, not just from an infrastructure point of view, but also how to look at the upstream interventions, which are critical to support intergenerational well-being. And those system strategies for success also include social capital investments, investing in thriving community centres and group-based parenting initiatives for long-term health. And so there is a lot of amazing work that's been done in the Pacific health space, which also has a flow-on effect into other areas of research outside of health as well. If I just move to our third insight now. And this is about co-designing disability systems and becoming village-led. And just acknowledging that there is much research that's being done in this space, driven by Pacific researchers for Pacific communities. And what we found in particular, there's research that's come out from Leaupepe, who's the Research Operations Manager at Waipapa Tamataro, University of Auckland, and Catherine Poltassi, who is the Director of Commissioning Disability Support Services, and the awesome work at Leva, that through evidence-based research and the co-designing with Pacific disability communities, they've brought out some amazing insights. They have really kind of doubled down around what it is to be safe when working with Pacific communities. Cultural safety is a non-negotiable. They've found from this disability research, but again, that echoes in the broader ecosystem. The importance to protect Pacific data sovereignty, and obviously looking at what are systems and processes that are working and then scaling it up. And that's been a really interesting approach to look like how whānau-centred funding models can enable the power of self-directed lived insights from Pacific communities, particularly within disability groups as well. So just move on to our fourth insight.
Yeah, from there, it's looking at the Moana Dreaming for System Change. So again, it's key things such as Pacific leadership there. It's having those in the room that are either in governance or in leadership roles to, again, provide that oversight at that higher level so that there's that universal understanding. And so that's a key aspect that's really got to actually happen before there can be some sustainable and legitimate system change. Culture is capital, so it gives that recognition of that cultural capital. And before you can recognize something, you have to understand it. So again, part of that is that, you know, creativity sustains the resilience and the economic growth. And again, similar to what Sara was sharing before, it's just the power of storytelling. And I think a lot of these key things is just around the recognition of that and the understanding that those ancestral practices actually have a lot of weight and a lot of strength with a lot of these communities. And if you understand that, that will allow you the ability to unlock a lot of that knowledge and unlock a lot of that that knowledge and data that you can then use to provide some more relevant and connected policies and initiatives and programs that will not just empower but enable a lot of these communities.
And yeah, finally, just thinking about like a Moana-centered future. From our experience doing evaluation, obviously we're one of the very few Pacific owned and led organizations in this space. We've been going for 7 years, and just working with other Pacific leaders in industry specific areas, whether it be health, education, business, the creative arts, digital, AI development. These are sort of the key areas that are having that ripple effect across industries that are important when considering a Pacific lens over MERL evaluation. So the co-design and the governance is really, really important. If you don't set up the way you design and include the communities that you work with and have a voice of representation in governance, it has to start strong from the beginning. Invest in community networks and funding the village. So obviously a lot of people talk about it takes a village, you know, your people around you, your support networks, your systems. Obviously from a Pacific lens, it has more of a place-based feel about it as well. Your village is where you're from, where your family's from, your extended family, that place that's your marking, or your country, and the people around you that support you to move forward. So it's looking at investing and funding those services and groups of people that know how to connect and activate Pacific communities. Recognizing data sovereignty as Pacific currency is such a crucial talking point moving forward around ownership of Pacific data. There are amazing research groups that are starting up. I can think of the Moanaroa research group at AUT. The University of Auckland has another strong health-led research group. There's a Pacific Data Sovereignty Group. So there's a lot of networks available in this space to be able to utilize that are talking about Pacific data sovereignty. It's just a matter of connecting into them, funding and scaling what already works, amplifying what that village system may look like, and valuing well-being as an economic metric. Where inclusion and belonging act as indicators of prosperity. I think one of the main differences for our community is that use of demonstrating storytelling through creativity and having storytelling as a narrative to explain data is such an important way to communicate as well. So yeah, those are the insights that we have.
And finally, just some, I guess, some reflection prompts and just some questions, probably leading some of the discussion and questions you may have post this is, how can we embed dreaming into evaluation? Who defines success? Who holds the pen, or in this case, who types the keyboard? And how can equity reshape evaluation frameworks? Contact.
Yeah, and a call to action, like I think at ECG we're very practical around our recommendations that we quite often give to clients. So, partnering with those that are already in the space is really, really useful and supportive in building the space. Refining how to report in terms of looking at equity and transformation. A lot of that can include visual ways of reporting and telling data as well. Evaluators are key allies. So even if you're not Pacific, but acknowledging that there is such an importance in the value of framing your methodology around a Pacific lens is really important. And we need more evaluators that can understand and connect into that space. To kind of shift that system from extraction to design. So thank you so much. That's us for the Kai and Korero. We'll pass it back to Sarah.
Well, thank you, Sara-Jane and Ralph. Yeah, really, really interesting. I haven't seen any questions come through the chat yet, so apologies if I've missed one. So very happy for people to take your microphones off mute and ask a question yourself, or start posting in the chat. While we're waiting, I of course have got a question. So one of the pieces that I noticed on one of your slides, which really struck me, was you had a point around equity as a method, not just a goal. And I just loved that. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what that means to you.
I mean, for myself, it really starts in that first phase of design, because if you don't set it up well from the beginning, well, you'll be doing more work in the fixing. But also just ensuring that everybody has a voice and is included in conversations and discussions. At ECG, we do that through our engagement methods and our methodology. So we have a blended way of developing our engagement that utilizes a Western way of doing things and Pacific way of doing things as well.
Yeah, and just to reinforce what Sarah's saying, I guess with our approach as well, it's allowing that equitable strand to kind of bind right through all the phases, from design, from delivery, from evaluation to then incorporation of recommendations, like that whole cycle, that whole process, they can either scale or if not, unless a program may have other problems, it's allowing that lens right through. So I think that's a key thing we've tried to do with all the work that we've done, and we've found, I guess, the dividends of that investment has been communities feel a sense of ownership. Because a key thing we've done, and I know what it feels like I know what it feels like to be consulted. And one thing that we've really tried to do is we always close the loop. So even after all our projects, even if we've consulted like 200 people, I still make it a thing to contact and email everyone, say thanks, and then give them the next steps. Like, this is actually what's going to happen, and this report's gone, and this is the potential options that is either going to go to policy, go to this, but hey, this is what you've said. Because I've been on the other end, and I'm sure a lot of you have been on the other end where you have a talanoa, you speak and you give your insights, your perceptions and your knowledge, and then you don't know, and then probably 2 years later some report comes out and you're like, oh shucks, that's where it landed. And so that's the type of thing, again, that goes back to that, it's closing the loop. So it's that entire cycle, and just trying to be, I guess, deliberate in terms of the equity right through the methodology. Yep.
Thank you. And I see that Dawn has put a question in the chat, and they've asked, what is your advice re storage, i.e. Google versus Microsoft? Quite a specific question. And I was thinking you might also like to just talk about the kinds of things or criteria, I guess, or the things that you think about when you think about.
Yeah, sure. So I think it might be the lawyer in us, because protecting your intellectual property is really important. And obviously when you're collecting on behalf of others, it's important as well. So I won't comment which is better. It's mainly finding the storage that can give you really good security, can minimize any risk. As our consultancy invests in heavy insurance for professional indemnity, and also just really investing in your protection of your storage and how you preserve data is really important. I think, as I said before, the data is not just the numbers. As you look through that, those are people, they're people, real numbers, real people. I was at the Pacific Data Advisory Group this morning, who are having a talanoa on the future of AI and digital inclusion. And it's so important to recognize that how AI and digital development is going to impact the future is inevitable. It's just how you can ensure that you can protect yourself, that you're risk averse, and that you have a policy in place that looks after the handling of specific data and how you use your digital tools. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say only thing I was gonna add, like the storage systems we use, I think what's real important, and I know everyone here will understand this, is to really differentiate between your customer and your client when you're looking at your data storage. So for example, for us, the client is MB, but the customer, I shouldn't say, but the customer in this sense is like the community. So it's understanding the layers of security that you're going to need for each one. So and being real transparent about it. So I think how we've stored our data is, so even some of the surveys and things that we've done, not just but with other government agencies, we've been real clear about, so for example, some of the surveys we've done, even the last year, the responses will stay with us. And again, that's that whole community real clear at the start, because obviously a lot of the clients will be like, oh, who said that? We really want to know. But part of that whole thing is that full frank discussion. And we've found for discussions to be full frank, sometimes people just want to say what they want to say. And part of what we all say is this is confidential. And then we'd even get into the, this data is information that's stored with us, or this is the systems we're using. When we do send information, some people have even asked us that, how are you sending this information to us? And we'll say, well, we usually use WeTransfer and this password protected, and then we text which is good, which is really great questions. But again, I guess to that storage question, it's really a key thing for us is number one, understanding the layer of storage and protection required pursuant to whether it is the client or the community customer, whoever that is, but then also understanding also having transparency, very transparent and clear, so that when people do share, there's no risk that you share, then they find out later, oh no, they always had access to the same survey results in the survey. So that's a key thing. And sometimes we've found with other clients, we've had to go back and really communicate that, because some people, even some of the clients don't get it. Like they'll say, oh, you're supposed to give it to us, blah, blah, blah. But we say, yeah, we'll give you this, but not this, because we actually got told, we told you right from the beginning. So yeah, something to consider as well. And I can see, oh.
Yep, a few more questions that come through. So one from Tony, and they've said that what they've taken from your korero is that the use of data should be grounded in equity, identity, learning, purpose, and legacy. So there's a lot in there. And just wondering if you've got anything more to say around that.
Nice. Mate, that's a summary there.
Those are big words there.
Thanks, Tony. Hey. That sounds good. Nothing further unless you got questions.
I think for me, if I were to sum up around data management, is that as evaluators, it's like stewardship, and you have to respect the data that comes in and look after it as like a taonga for the next person that will continue on in the research in that way. And it's just respecting that.
And Joanne has asked about suggestions on influencing council, government funders about reframing evaluation and reporting around a Pacific lens.
Oh, no, that's a good question. What we've found, so we recently did economic scoping paper for Manurewa, one of the entities there in Auckland. Best thing we've found is like what we've learned, what we've found when, especially this was for council, is at the end of the day, a lot of them, they want to develop things that's relevant for the audience. They really want relevance for the audience. That's what we've found. Like at the end of the day, they can get 10 different evaluators, but really it's which one is going to give them the most relevant, the most accurate data that's going to cater for that audience, for that community, that's going to maximize the benefit. And in maximizing the benefit, that amplifies the return on investment on their end and allows for that sustainable growth and so forth, all those things. So what we've found is we always utilize the Western approaches really well. So we do the same, like all of you here, we create the frameworks and we have the metrics in play and we have the key questions and we have all those key things. But what we've found is we do that, but then we add on those cultural elements. So it's almost like an add-on is what we've found. That way we've found that with some of the work we've done that's not necessarily Pacific, but it's Fish and Pika was an example. We did that for them. It wasn't necessarily Pacific, but we incorporated a Pacific engagement tool and we incorporated a Pacific metric, and that was for anybody and everybody. And what happened is, what the final report we gave them actually gave them far more insights than they expected. And then, and because for this particular client, a whole bunch of engineers, so they were very formulaic and the way they talk. So they just wanted, and we knew that. So we knew they were engineers before we even got into that presentation. So we tailored a lot of our stuff around quants. So we had a whole lot of quantitative numbers, quantitative stuff, So that type of, the way we communicated, it definitely allowed them to understand. But then, like, I went back to what I was saying before, like, you have to show the value. You have to show the value. And so, so for that Manurewa one we did, there was massive value there because we used the Pacific lens, we used the Pacific approach, and actually the feedback, the information that came back to the actual local board was far more than they expected. So they kind of knew, we knew they were going to give us this, but then we gave them all this. And then when people can see the value, and they can see that this value benefits not just the community, but it benefits them. I mean, geez, local board elections have just finished, so they look flashier than they actually are when they start dropping all the terms and stuff that we've incorporated into these reports. And that's a good thing, because it means if they get back into the council and other stuff, then they'll again look to utilize those things. So I guess that's a question for us. It's not deviating from what you've already learned, and it's not deviating from those systems. And there are a lot of non-Pacific here that do great work in the Pacific space. So it's not deviating from that, but really it's adding on, and it's demonstrating clearly, just as the usual metrics of scalability, sustainability, efficiency, but if you're adding all those cultural nuances as well around well-being, and actually demonstrating that these are the things that actually have a link around that cause and effect stuff, that people will actually value it. People will actually go, wow, I never knew this was actually a big thing, but man, this is something we can look. So that's how we've done it. We've kind of softly adding it. And then thankfully more of the government agencies and stuff want us to do more of their stuff, because it's allowing those that I guess at the higher up the food chain to understand the work we're doing, but also them seeing a different aspect, that they're like, oh man, this is something that really can benefit this program, and it's something that they can use moving forward. So that's how we've done it, Joanne, if that makes sense.
And you can connect with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you want to ask anything more, Joanne, or? No? Okay. And Monita has asked, is there any information on another Pacific Data Sovereignty conference? That was a great platform for learning. Don't know whether anyone knows about that, do they? Anyone on the call at all?
Yeah, you can sign up to the Pacific Data Sovereignty Network. You just research online. That's one way where you can keep up to date with the discussions. But also there are other networks that are bringing the issue to light as well. The Moana Roa just had their conference recently at AUT, and the University of Auckland also has those networks that quite often are bringing this conversation more as an area and topic of discussion into other research as well. So I think if you connect through those networks online, you'll be able to find the access to when the next one will be happening.
Okay, that seems to be all of the questions in the chat. Is there anyone online who'd like to be brave enough to actually ask a question?
I would like to ask a question to Ata. Hi everyone, thank you so much, Sara-Jane and Ralph, for the presentation. It's really good to have these, to continue to talk about what's important for Pacific, especially in data, and even if we keep repeating ourselves, because maybe one day the penny will drop. I'm really keen. I had a few questions, but I think the ultimate question I'd like to ask you is, you keep referring to a Pacific lens, and stopping short of asking you like what frameworks you use, I want to kind of understand, or if you could unpack what you mean by Pacific lens, and at which point do you incorporate it within your research evaluation journey, like even from the data types that you use, the data analysis, data interpretation, what does that actually look like? You did mention about including, maybe it's incorporating like the Pacific voices, but how does that come to be really? And then at the end of the research cycle. How do you determine that those are the key data, points that you want to make within your research versus everything else within the frameworks that you use? Because I hear you talk about adding to a Western framework. I'd like to think I'm more of the other camp where it's like it's sitting alongside those things. It's almost like apples and oranges to me. But then how do you do it, and what does that look like? It's really interesting. And for those who are in evaluation now who aren't Pacific, be interesting to know how that's done and how you effectively do it, and the kind of successes you look like what the impacts you get from the type of work you do. Taylor, I hope that makes sense.
Nah, thanks, Ata, thanks for that. I think, man, there's a lot in there, but I think, when I say Pacific lens, it's and it's good you say that too, because when you narrow it down, it's a Samoan lens. Because then if it's really my lens, and I think, and it's thanks for bringing that up, because you kind of clarify. And I'll give you an example. So when we say Pacific, and that's why I slash Indigenous, I say Indigenous as well. So we were blessed. We recently came from Japan. We went on a trade delegation thing to the World Expo with the Maori trade delegation, Te Aratini. And again, we were there for an Indigenous Economic Forum Week. And I'm bringing this up because this will connect some of those dots that you're saying. So what happened is when we went there, I was Samoan, and we were there, and we connected with a whole lot of even Indigenous Japanese people, and a whole lot of these just Canadians, Australians. It was a whole bunch. And so when we're talking, yes, we've got different perspectives and worldviews, but there was a commonality, and some of them was based on values. So some of that stuff is those value systems which allowed me to connect. And I guess, for example, that collective approach, that was a big thing that I found, the communal approach, or the communal collective approach, which I found is far different. And that's something that we found we could resonate so easily with all these different cultures, because we had a way of looking at things like, how is this better for everyone, as opposed to how is this better for the client first, or how is it better for me first. It was, how is it better for everyone? So that very holistic, very communal, very collective way of looking at things. That's one thing that I would say, probably from a Pacific lens, is what we've used, because whether you're Tongan, Fijian, or whether, and what we've learned, even when, and again, going back to what you're saying, how we found it, all the work we've done, we've been blessed because we've gone to different things. I went to a forum in India and another one in Malaysia one time a few years, and it's the same thing. It's when you connect with the Indigenous communities, they have that, there's key values around respect, there's ecological values around the connection with their place, their land, their river, their space. So all these things that are very hard to quantify is what I'm saying. It's a lens. And so if you've got an appreciation of that unquantifiable space, that some may probably say airy-fairy, up in the air, but if you have an appreciation and understanding of that is a lens that will, in our opinion, put you in good stead when you approach a lot of the communities, because that will allow you to not try and confine. And it's funny, I'll give you another example, is when we do we had another private sector client that wanted us to come and do some engagement, because no one was they had tried, and they had an HR team, awesome HR people, lovely people, but they just couldn't get people out there. Oh, they're not, we don't know what they want. They're not engaging in the surveys. They're not internet, da, da, da. And then they did stuff like one-on-one. So we did group discussions based on the divisions. So, and then we did Talanoa sessions, and the majority of them were in the manufacturing space. They were all Pacific, a lot of Pacific Māori. And so going back to what you're saying, it was a very collective. Trying to get one out to talk was going to be a mish. We knew that. But then getting like groups of 10, and then having And another thing we found, sorry, and this is another thing we kind of incorporated, is we kind of, for us as ECG, we have a that sensory, what do we call it? The sensory engagement approach. So we do, so it's not just talking. So we always have food. So for these particular things, it's hospitality, and people go, oh, there's just a feed. It's like, nah, there's value in food. There's value in sitting around and talking. And the way we did it, this particular client with the HR team, they had 2 or 3 of them just sit in and watch, and they were just, I felt like they were anthropologists saying we were just like doing the story, because they were like note taking, like, wow, look at the way, and we got the boys to talk, and they all got into it, and the one thing they learned quickly was, man, you guys never just asked him direct. I said, no. I said, you want to get a response, you got to go off-road. It's not driving from A to B. You got to go A into number 1 into alpha, and you're going all over the place. So you're like, you're up, down, all around, and then you land into it's hard to explain it, but then you land on the answer, and the answer's there, and then they're kind of like, oh my gosh, that's what we wanted to know for the last 3 months, but all these guys have actually answered it after, amongst the laughing and all the other stuff. And we said, yeah, that's part of our approach. It's having a collective, it's communal, there's laughter, so humor is another key thing. So all these things, you get these things going, and that goes back to what I was saying before around accuracy. Then all of a sudden the data you're getting is very accurate, because then you say, this is what you wanted to hear, this is what you got. It's not assumed, it's not speculative, it's actual, because you guys are sitting there just to test us, I guess, because we kind of told them what we're going to do, and it's hard to explain it. They're like, it sounds like a focus group. I say, it's not a focus group. This isn't the way. And then when they actually sat there, listened, and they're like, oh man, in 2 hours you got everything you needed for the last 3 months. We said, yeah, we can do this again and again with the other groups, and it's an approach. So to answer your question, it's that lens. If I didn't have that lens, if I didn't have that approach to appreciate our values, understanding the collective communal way of doing things, then I would have been no different than the HR team, highly qualified for the letters and everything behind it. I'll probably be no different. That makes sense.
Marlo, thank you, Marlo. And I'm assuming that that's how you analyze the data that comes through, that you've got that nuanced mindset to be able to understand what data is saying to you.
Yes.
I think that for those that are not Pacific, the type of research methodology that we use when we're talking about a Pacific lens is one of our core ones, because we use a couple, but one of our core ones is the Talanoa, which is called, in academic circles, it's called TRM, the Talanoa Research Methodology. I just want to acknowledge Dr. Timote Violetti, who is the founder of getting it published as an academic framework. And we were just at a conference with him about a month ago, and we were asking, how do you acknowledge Talanoa as a methodology, but also do you own it, like, because with the academic way of publishing? And he said, Talanoa, it's part of many Pacific cultures. It's a kind of a key connector around engagement in a way that can find and gather insights together. So nobody owns it. It's just that as an academic, he was one of the first to publish it. And so to get research approved and to get funding grants and, to get your research acknowledged, that had helped in terms of the space of research methodologies. So I'd encourage those that are familiar with the TRM just to have a look at that, and the founder who published that, Dr. Violetti.
So I just got one more question just to follow on, because I this is something really important for me, is when you're referring to a Pacific lens, I'm really interested in how you guys navigate, and you talk about cultural capital, and I guess the most important cultural capital we have is our languages. So I'm really keen to understand from you guys how, if and when you navigate through the uses of our languages, and how does that, I guess, yeah, in terms of how you use that. When you talk about metrics, and I asked about analysis, and then you talk about, you know, what your findings are. So really interested on your, you know, on how you guys do that and your thoughts around that.
Yeah, no, language is crucial. We use language, and it depends on what's requested. So we've probably only other one time we had to do that, one for that group, and we had to get in speakers. So we had to get in speakers, and so so to your point, we've had to do it when it's community and it's for so for this particular project, it was around scamming. So around the whole scamming thing, and people need to understand. And so obviously with again, there wasn't much engagement. So it was trying to, how do you engage and understand? And so a lot of it was getting and understand. So imagine trying to like communicate scamming to my dad, who's Samoan, who does not English as a second language. So even me, I even tested on my old man. Like, so it's trying to so like, you know, you talk about scamming, everyone need to, oh yeah, into the online scamming, but trying to communicate that first off, the definition of that to a church of Fijians or Tongans, and trying to get that, we've had to use that. So for that particular project, that was a crucial element, that culture, like we had to get that understanding, and the beauty of it was there was some universal shared themes right across the board, because then we had a Samoan, Fijian, and just there's three, and Tongan translators, and then they did their own. They were there. I was there for the Samoan one, and then how we did that was, again, it's grouping all the insights and vision, and then we kind of collated it by having a discussion as a note taker stuff, just to see what were those themes, what were the things that came across, and how they understood it. And what and so that's how we did it. That's how we actually navigated that, because like I said, that to say scam and to stand up there and explain it, and then a lot of them, and the funny thing is they don't have laptops, but everyone, including my old man and everybody has a cell phone, and not just any cell phone. They got the latest Samsung, and they only use like 2% of the functions. The other 98% is just they just take photos, maybe Facebook, but it's funny, yeah. You're like, bro, these guys got the flashiest, latest iPhone, but they only use 1 or 2% of the functionality. But they're open to being hacked. They're open to being scammed. They can be scammed. They're high risk of being scammed. So how do you communicate that to them in a way that allows them to understand how dangerous it is? And yeah, there were some, man, real key things that came by using our language, and then communicating that back to the client, because then there was different insights that they hadn't seen. So I'll give you an example. One of the key things is that then they were never going to go for the 0800 something number. And this was a big insight across all of them. And so there was a number, I think it's on the NZ website. So a lot of them said that if a key insight was, and this is for universally, especially the older Pacific, was if someone rang you and you didn't know who they were, and what would you do? And the first thing they said, oh, if I didn't understand, I'll just give them my son's number. And I'll say, talk to him, he'll explain it. And that's universally, honestly, it was like fascinating. Like for us, we already knew that was going to come, but for the client, they'll say, oh, wouldn't they want to text this 3-digit number to get an expert? And they're like, nah, because in their heads, it's like, if 707 or whatever, it goes to who? It goes to nobody. It goes to some random thing is going to check it. It can be screened. So even though they had the best intentions, this particular client, digital client, that was the biggest issue. They couldn't understand that this particular demographic were never ever gonna text a number. That their sole default was, oh, if someone asked them more questions, because we even tested the questions, the scam questions. Also their default was, oh, talk to my daughter talk to here's her number, 021, da, 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 and that was it. So, which is a good thing. We kind of went, oh man, that's a good risk. So by default, they were never ever gonna answer the questions. They were never gonna give any details away, but they were gonna throw their kids under the bus, or one of their that was their. So again, sorry, that's an example, if that makes sense, of how we did. Do you remember that? Yeah. Oh, we're out of time, I think.
Yes, thank you so much. I had to laugh to myself too. While I don't have the latest phone, I am probably guilty of only using 1 or 2% of the functionality of the phone that I do have. But anyway, at least I can make calls and send texts and look at the emails. So. Well, thank you again so much, Ralph and Sara-Jane. I really enjoyed that, and particularly enjoyed the examples that you gave, from your own, as you say, like your own lived reality, your own lived experience. I think that's always just so rich. So I will, and as you can see in the chat, there's a lot of appreciation coming through. So I will now close us with a karakia. So, kia tau tuaranga Māori, ki runa ina iwi o te ao. This one is, let your peace reign on all the people of the world. So may you go and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.